Okay, good morning. Hemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 2, we're at the bottom of page 1194. Okay. So, I explained yesterday, we discussed in detail, we're talking about how the is making the case, how the Makif, the Sovev, the root of Sovev, or Sovev, what he called HaSovev, he wants to make the case how it's called the white flame or the white fire, not the dark fire like the Memaleh, Kav, which is directly impacted by the darkness and the concealment of the Tzimtzum. And its purpose is to radiate and illuminate the space within the Tzimtzum that was created by the Tzimtzum. The Sovev, on the other hand, he says, his purpose is not to radiate, it's to reveal the divine consciousness in its purest form as it is pre-Tzimtzum, and it's not impacted by the Tzimtzum. And the fact that we learned that there was a concealment. So he explained, firstly, Nogaba had Tzimtzum. It just was touched by the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum causes it to recede, not to be directly in any way diminished, but it shouldn't shine and radiate. It's in a revealed way in the space, the cholol created by the Tzimtzum. The second point, which is either a second explanation or a different explanation, is based on the Maimon Vayikra, that the receding, the Tzimtzum caused that the Igul HaGadol, to go into a state of koyach, which he calls yechelis, not just potential, yechelis, capacity, as we discussed at length. So he says that that is actually an ilui, that causes an advantage, essentially a greater power to the oil, because it's in the state, and I explained yesterday, because when it's in the state of capacity, it's far closer and far more connected to the very source, which its purpose is to reveal. However, the Tzimtzum causes that we should not be able to experience it. But now let's continue. So what happens now? Fine. The Tzimtzum had two impacts. One, it caused the Eir HaBli to recede, and it was not diminished. It's either just not able to, told not to shine in any conscious way in the space of existence, where we need independent consciousness, or that the Eir goes in a state into pre-Tzimtzum, before the Tzimtzum, the Eir was there in a revealed way. If the Tzimtzum causes it to go into a state of yechelis, which is an elevated state. But the purpose is that it should be revealed. Remember, the purpose of Yadaita Ayin, Ki Avayu Elikim, is that we should know V'Yadaita and V'Shaveis Levavecha, that Avayu Elikim also B'Shamayim Memaleh. In other words, we should also experience this higher level of divine revelation. So now he says the following. V'Im came, continuing this point, that now that there's a ilui in the Eir goes into a state of yechelis. So there's you can say it's in a purer form. It's not in an actualized form, but it's now within the yechelis of God, yechelis ha'atzmus, not yechelis as he explains in Vayikra, the highest level of yechelis, but a lower level as we discussed. So he says, V'im kain, kashemer Eir, when this Eir radiates, in other words, when we will reveal this Eir through our Aveda, since the Tzimtzum did not diminish it, whether according to the Nagabat Tzimtzum, that it just caused it not to affect in the space of existence, or now you could say in a deeper way, it went into Yechelis. The Eir did not get diminished. The Eir went actually more into the source itself, receded, and is now encompassed within the source itself in the Yechelis level. So therefore, when it does radiate, since the Tzimtzum never affected it in any direct way, But we're speaking now, let's not talk about Noga about Tzimtzum. Let's talk about the explanation that it's like Yechelis. So bottom line is that Tzimtzum did not cause the air to get weaker. When it comes to the level of Er HaGvul, the Kav, there absolutely it gets weaker. Not only does it get weaker, as it travels, it goes through weaker, more diminishments because it has to be tailored to the structure of existence. That's its purpose. To use the analogy that we use often with the artist, when the artist applies himself with the paintbrush to paint, there he has to be affected by the tzimtzum, because if not, he'll have one blob of infinite paint. There won't be an image. You want a structure. You want chachma, bina, das. You want a painting that has specific details. So the air must be affected, must be traveling through the tzimtzum all the time. But the air habligvul of the artist, where he envisions the whole thing, how it is within his spirit, what he wants to really convey, the ultimate purpose of creation. In other words, how it reflects the source, not the functionality of actually creating the art. As we learned, the Eir HaBligvul within the artist, as he is even being beyond being an artist, let's say, or an artist with infinite possibilities, that has to be, that remains intact. Nothing changed there. The only thing is, it can't be directly involved in the process of painting, because if he had all the infinite possibilities, he wouldn't paint this painting. He has to apply himself, like the teacher has to apply himself to the student. But the Eir HaBligvul within the teacher or within the artist, and in this case, within the divine, has not been diminished. It's just been, so to speak, not allowed to impact the specific structure that we need to create, or else there wouldn't be a structure. So since it was never, the tzimtzum does not really impact it, on the contrary, the Eir went more into its pure form because it's completely not subject to tzimtzum, based on what we said. It went into a state of yechelis. So kashameir, when it does radiate, it's a gili mamish b'li shum isalmus klal. You will have a pure form of it. Like I said yesterday, you have an exact, unadulterated, undiluted dimension, because the air never was impacted by the tzimtzum in a direct way. The tzimtzum never diminished it. At most, it didn't allow it to shine into the space of existence. Like the student, like the teacher has to restrain and conceal, because the student has to be able to learn. But once the student does come to 40 years old or 40 years later, and we can receive all the infinite brilliance of the artist, of the teacher. Because as we said, because there was no hisalmus at all. On the contrary, it went into a state of yechelis. That's how I understand what he's saying here. When he says kashemeira eir. You could also, so let's read on, because it could also explain it a bit differently, but I don't want to say that yet. Let's just read inside, and then we'll see the full picture. Shahari b'chlolos ha'er shelifnei tzimtzum, hainu ha'er habligvul, because the general er lifnei tzimtzum, which is the er habligvul. Remember, even though lifnei tzimtzum, we also have er hagvul and we have oisius and letters, but they're all submerged. What dominates before the tzimtzum is elikuz b'pshitus. The given is the divine infinite expansiveness, as we learned. So when you generally speak about er lifnei tzimtzum, close er, which is the er habligvul, heizgalshu shelo ya'idei helam tzimtzum. Its revelation is not subject to the concealment of the tzimtzum. V'im kain. So he says, even the oyer before the tzimtzum is not impacted by the tzimtzum. The only thing is, it doesn't shine. Once the tzimtzum happens, it doesn't shine within the space of existence. So he says, v'im kain mekol kain. If that's the case with the general revelation of light before the tzimtzum, so for sure, when the Eir recedes into Yechelis, the capacity of the divine capacity to give of this Eir HaBligvul, and it's right now not the force that is active, because the force that's active now is creating the finite structure through finite energy. So if the Eir before the tzimtzum is in general not concealed by the tzimtzum, so for sure, when this air goes into a higher state, which I said before was the state of Yechelis. So when the gili that will come from that will not be subject to any concealment at all. It'll be in its purest form.
It's not a gilui.
Valkain nikra eish levana. And that's why it's called white, not dark, but white, pure light. Because it does not affected by the eish chayra, the darkness of the tzimtzum in any given way. Okay, that's what he says here. Good. So, as I explained the other day, there's a concept. The Rebbe speaks in a sikha, and it's a common subject that when the Romans or the Babylonians, when the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, so we know that the Ayin was not destroyed. It went either under the ground. The Even Hashsiya always remains intact. So the Rebbe explains, because since Kedusha le'zazim kema, Kedusha never shifts and changes. So even though in the Giluyim of the Beis Hamikdash, meaning the actual structure, we know there's no Beis Hamikdash today. That's why we can't serve there. There's no karbonos. All the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash is not chal. But because of Kedusha le'zazim came, and not just spiritually, but even physically, something remains forever as an indicator to tell us that the nitzchias of the Beis Hamikdash always remains intact. Something like when we say the etzem luz, it says about a human being that tzaddikim, their bodies don't decompose. But even those that are not tzaddikim, the bodies decompose, but the etzem luz, there's a discussion what the etzem luz is. Some say it's the bone behind the top of the spine. There are different explanations. The etzem luz will always remain, and that will be the yesod, the foundation upon which, when Chiyas HaMesim happens, the body will be rebuilt. What's my point? My point is that even when there's a tzimtzum, there's something that remains untouched by the tzimtzum. So even though right now, in Eilam Haza, especially in Golus, but even in general Eilam Haza, we live in a world that was Bereshis bara Lakim, a world that was created through a concealment. And this world would not exist without the concealment, but behind the scenes remains Oyer that we are not conscious of, because if we were, we wouldn't be able to exist, but it remains untouched. So what I think he's saying here is Nagabat Simtsum still means it's touched. It's touched, but however, as he explains, it's touched that it shouldn't affect us. But the Oyer itself is exactly as it was before the Tzimtzum, as he said earlier. Now, when he goes into Yechelis, he's saying even something furthermore. Because there he doesn't say it's Ilui. There he just said, if you look at the Lashon, he said like this. The Lefizem Nira, and as we learned in Samach Vav yesterday, that the Oyer radiates there as exactly as it was before, but not greater. The Ayin at Simtsum, that Simtsum is that it shouldn't extend into our consciousness. It remains only in the teacher's consciousness. In other words, from God's perspective, Das Elyon basically, the Oyer is intact. When he says now, he says it goes to Ilui. It's not just remains intact. It goes into a higher state because it's going into a state of Yechelis as it recedes. So therefore, it's in a way deeper connected to its source. So then when it does get revealed, and that will be La'asad Lave, in a full glory, and through our Aveda, you have a perfect image, a perfect Oyer, as close as possible, that reflects the divine and was not subject to any form of concealment at all. That's, I believe, what he really wants to say here. Just in different issues. I may have said this already, but I just wanted to reiterate it using the examples I gave. Okay. Before we continue, does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have.
Go ahead.
Everything that you explain is fascinating, but this this is not that the oil is male. Bli shum is almost called. The oil is not male. If you're talking male, is about to us.
One second. I just said that through our Aveda and La'osad Love, it will be meir. That's the whole point.
Okay.
The tzimtzum causes it to recede, but it remains now in a state either intact or even in a higher state. So when it will be revealed, that's how I explained it. That's the only way to explain it, because you just say that there was, that tzimtzum did cause it to remain, go into a state of yechelis. So you have to say when he says, in keikashemeir, which means when the air will radiate. That's what he says.
So the symptom is in order. We should be able to do what we have to now.
Well, let's go back to the example. The teacher is teaching a child Aleph Beis. He cannot reveal the bligvul or overwhelm, and there won't be any existence. So there has to be a restraint, but it remains intact inside the teacher, and here even in a higher state. Now, as the student grows and learns, in the case of us, we haven't even finished the subject. We're going to discuss it now. Now he finished learning about Aish Heh and Aish Levana. So we know now the two levels of light: the finite, that relates to existence, and the infinite, which reveals the divine and is not subject to the tzimtzum in a direct way. So now he's going to go and say, he's going to talk about Malchus, how Aish Heh is aspiring to Aish Yud, because Malchus, the lower level, the Aish Heh, the dark flame that's affected by the tzimtzum, wants to connect to the white flame, to the white fire. Now we're going to continue where we left. So this was the whole discussion in the last 2.5 pages. From the middle of page 1192 was all about explaining Aish Heh and Aish Levana.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm a little confused about when we do our avoider, we do mitzvahs and mosius in this world. Are we at this point only Megala only Aish Shchora? Because you keep saying with the Aish Levana that it's going to be Lasi Lavo when there's a Gula Shlema. That much I can get very clearly. But what about the or that we're Megala at this time? Is it only the Aish Shchora?
We're going to learn about it. I would just wait till we finish the subject. He's going to discuss it.
Okay.
We're in the middle of learning this. Right now, he didn't go, I just explained this line. Right now, what we have is the explanation of these two types of lights and how the tzimtzum impacts or doesn't impact them. But he didn't get yet back to V'yadaita Yom to explain what the Avodah is and what we achieve. But basically, he's going to explain it, obviously. That's the whole point.
Okay.
Because Mishamayim Memal, yeah.
So I teed it up for you.
Fine. Now he continues. V'zeu Aish Yud b'chinas Aish Levana shu b'chinas Gili Ein Sof. And this is Aish Yud, the Ish. It refers to the white fire, the white flame, which is Gili Ein Sof, the Gili of the infinite Sovev that he called, the transcendent infinite light. Okay. And now he's going to go back to, if you recall, the expression was, he said, Malchus is Aish Heh, Isha. Vel Ishach Chukosach. That the Isha, Malchus, Kabul, what?
Vel Ishech Chukosech.
Ishech Chukosech, okay. That Isha, the Malchus, the Mekabel, yearns, a Chukah, like he said, Semeya, to Shiur, to the Ish, to the Mashpia. So now he's going to explain these two levels. To make it a little easier to just visualize, even though he doesn't say it explicitly, you can say sometimes the sun is like Ish Yud, Ish, Zah, Mashpia, and the Levana, even though Ish Levana here doesn't mean the moon, it means white light, white flame. But Levana is a Makabel, Malchus, that receives light from the sun, and it wants to receive it. And the Miyot HaLevana, which is the beginning of the descent, was that the Levana was diminished and doesn't have light of its own. But the Avodah is that Malchus yearns to connect to its mashpia. In this case, that the Aish Heh, which he's going to say now, El Ishech Shukosech, goes on, the Zelv El Ishech Shukosech. The Bechinas Malchus, Bechinas Aish Heh, Isha. The Malchus, the level of Aish Heh. Remember, he said earlier, the level of Bihi Baram, Behei Baram. The letter Hey, the Oisius. The Oisius used to create existence. So it's Malchus. Shukoso lebchinas Aish Yud. It yearns, it pines, it aspires to Aish Yud, to the white light, to the white flame. Bechinas Eidei Sof HaSovev Kalamin. Betekef HaTshuka of Atsemoyin. With the intensity of yearning and thirst. So to put it in simple English, the true Aveda of a soul down below consists of several steps, but we're talking about two main steps here. One is, as we learned, first to just be aware of and recognize it, that the divine within, that's concealed within existence. So when you make a bracha on a piece of food, birurim, as we learned, you clarify and separate and recognize the godly energy within your life, within your existence. That is the Aveda of Das Tachten, of the Yud, of the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. But a person who's really working on themselves in Aveda comes to the next level of his bananus, as we learned. And if you want to know exactly where the Aveda was spelled out, was right here on page, let me just refer you to it. Yeah, on top of page 1180. Where he speaks about the different levels of bittul. And then you come to the next level that you want more than just the divine within existence. You come to realize that God is much more than just an artist that created this world. So you want, so the tshuka begins of the thirst of Malchus to not just find the God that's commensurate to its level, connected to existence. It pines and thirsts and yearns to connect to the divine that's beyond existence. What he calls here, so that's the process here. So it's not just that as an Aish, that it has a flame, a fire that relates to existence, but he wants to connect to the divine that's beyond existence. That's the yearning and the thirst of Malchus. And he adds, "Betekef atshuka v'atzimoyin." Remember, he said, "Nehera tata." What was the line? The lower light is always calling and seeking to connect to its source. And here, the source is the higher level. But then he goes even further. The kolshkein and more, and even more so to the Eidei Sof that's higher than Sovev and Memaleh. Shal zenema kenizgav shmei levade. Shegam b'chinas nizgav u'b'chinas shmei levad. Draka ora levad. So you say nizgav shmei levade. That the shmei, his name is exalted. So even the name, even the level of nizgav, which means it's above existence, is still only shmei. That's how he's teaching it. Only a reflection. So the neshama, the Malchus, wants to reach higher than shmei. Not just the reflection of the divine, like we said, the Ur HaSovev, which reflects the infinite divine, but he wants to reach even higher than that. Ulozeis smeya nafsha. And to this goal, to this objective, to this seal, to this purpose, the soul thirsts.
Someone
What?
Velozeis someone nafsho. To
You
this.
sure it's Sama, not Smeya?
No, some.
Because before he said Hatzmeya, remember Hatzmeya hates Sama?
Yeah, but in the Digduk should be here someone.
Okay. So the soul is thirst. Kesev v'kiloyin. He's adding now two more words. Before he used the words Shukev v'tzemoyin, yearning and so on. Kesev and kiloyin, let me try to explain. Kiloyin is complete being dissolved and essentially being completely absorbed in the source. That's what kiloyin means. Kiloyin could be a negative. When something is eliminated, you say kiloyin, but when you say, for example, the wick, nichla
Psilo.
psila, b'teicha eish. So what's happening? The kiloyin hashemen, when you light, let's say, a candle with oil, so the shemen continues to get less and less as it becomes part of the flame. Kesef is like from the word yeah, but I'm trying to find the English word. It's so tzemoyin, shuke, kesef, and kiloyin. Kiloyin is the highest level of complete absorption and dissolving. Kesef is like a very deep form of
Yearning.
I'm trying to find the difference in kesef and shuka.
Yearning.
So then what's shuka?
Shuka is a deep desire, but kesef is deeper.
Okay, fine. Al kapanim, they all mean that essentially this level is seeking and yearning and pining and thirsting and going a race von sich, it's called. It's becoming this battle, it's becoming like completely absorbed. It wants to be completely absorbed in this higher source that he says, Shalamayla b'chinas Sovev kalam. So I guess the word shukah and simoyin he used for Sovev kalam. And kesef and kiloyin he's using for lamayla Sovev kalam. So maybe it's a deeper level of bittul, basically.
The Rebbe Rashab is telling us his experience.
You're not off the hook. He wants you also to experience some of it. So let me say this. What is the difference between the yearning to Sovev and the yearning to the Memaleh Sovev? So I'll explain it somewhat in Aveda. So we discussed, if you remember, he did talk about the three levels earlier. Remember, Naran, Chaya, and Yechida. The page I referred to, 1180. He said there were three levels. The level of discovering the divine within existence we spoke about. Then we spoke about Das Elyon. He said Re'usa Deliba, that he's yearning to connect to his source. But there's still something that's yearning, something that's beyond existence. The third level, what he said was the Atzmis HaNefesh. On page 1180, he said, that Mitis Inyan Das Elyon, he said, is the core connection of a soul to its source. Haskashus atzmi de neshama, he said etzma neshama, not due to the fact that you recognize that it's beyond you. In level 2, the yearning is you want not just the divine that relates to you, but the divine that's beyond you. In level 3, it's not even about beyond you. It's about connecting to the very essence of who you are, is what he explained there on that page. You can look it up. He says more words about it. It's not through his bonus, he says. It's like the love of a child to a parent. Yeah. The Amit is Das Elyon. That's what he said on page 1180. Okay. V'zeu shekosav. Samchuni Bashishus Revduni b'tapuchim. Kicheles ava ani. So this is a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. I think it was posted, the translation, a little while ago, before Yom Tov. Am I right?
I think Cheskel, you may have posted that.
Yeah, the Rashi on it is there also.
Yeah, let's see how he translates it. Let me see.
It's from Chabad.org. They were kind enough to put it up.
Okay, so Samchuni means like smichus, like you're getting support. He says here, I think the word is sustain me. Samchuni Bashishus. What's Bashishus? Samchuni Bashishus.
Rashi's right there after it in the same column.
Yeah, he says like this, sustain me with flagons of wine. So Ashishus is referring to wine. Ravduni b'tapuchim. Spread my bed with apples, for I am lovesick. Okay, Rashi says, sustain me, now as is the manner of the sick, with flagons of grape wine or with cakes of pure wine. Spread my bed with apples for good for me. Okay. Well, in Likutei Torah and Shir Hashirim, and Chassidus has lengthy explanations in this verse. So what we need to focus on here is how he's using it to explain what he wants to say here. That basically cheles av is the key operative word here. That I'm sick with love. Why is he sick? Because he's yearning to the point he gets lovesick. Sometimes this is going to be explained more at length as we go further, but let me just say it briefly. The word chela is gematria memtes. Moshe Rabbeinu, it says that there are 50 gates of knowledge, of bina, of understanding, and Moshe reached 49 of them, but not the 50th, until Har Nevoy, Nun Boy, when he in his istalkus. So Chassidus explains, because he always was yearning for that 1/50th, the 50th gate. So therefore, cheles ava is essentially the aveda where a person feels inadequate. Now, for people on a lower level, feeling inadequate or feeling that you're lacking something, it could be on a low level. But even in the highest levels, cheles ava is the state that he's calling here the chesed v'kiloyin, the how Aish Heh, Malchus is yearning. So based on what Rashi that you posted, is that like a person who's sick in bed, so what do you do to revive him and to help heal? So what he's saying is, support me with wine, or sustain me, bring me wine and apples. These are the ways to sustain and revive the cheles ava. Now remember, this is all connected to Eliyahu Hanavi healing the broken Mizbeach, which is Malchus, because Malchus is lacking something. And this lack is what he's describing here. Samchuni Bashishus, Rivduni b'tapuchim, ki cheles ava ani. Because I'm lovesick. So cheles ava v'tshuka, means the love for God is so deep that the person feels weak and inadequate to the point you call them sick. Chela. But as I explained, chela doesn't necessarily mean sick, God forbid, with a disease or with an illness. Chela could also mean lacking the highest levels. When you say somebody's really yearning for something, that yearning is called the cheles ava. So the Rebbe Rashab explains now. Shezeh maimer knesses Yisrael. This is the statement. This is a statement made by Knesset Yisrael. Remember, Shir HaShirim, as the Rambam writes, though it's written like a romantic dialogue, a romantic experience, but it's between Knesset Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the Rebbe Rashab says this pasuk, Knesset Yisrael is Malchus. Knesset Yisrael means the gathering, the community of Israel. It refers to Malchus, the Sheresh HaNeshamas. Hibchinas Malchus L'mayla. That's the level of Malchus L'mayla. So what is Knesset Yisrael saying? Samchuni Bashishus. This is a statement made by Malchus, by the souls of Israel. The nichsefa v'gam kolsa nafsha. That it is yearning, and its soul is expiring. Kolsa, the neshama gate Aish. That's a Yiddish way of saying kolsa nafsha. The soul is expiring in deep yearning and love.
Koisef v'chiloyon.
Yeah, like he said, yeah. Lales el deida liskal be'er Hashem. Remember, deida is its lover. It's a beloved. Anila deidi v'deidi li. That it's pining and yearning and going out of its, literally expiring. Its soul is expiring in love to elevate toward its beloved, which means, of course, to Hashem, to God. Malchus, Aish Heh, is yearning in love to Aish Yud. It wants to connect to the source that's even higher than Sovev Kalam, like we read earlier. Okay. Liskalel be'er Hashem, to be encompassed in the divine light. Ein Sof Baruch Hu shalamayla megeder Memaleh v'Sovev. That's higher even than the domain of Memaleh and Sovev, the divine within existence and the divine beyond existence. We're talking here beyond the beyond. Like I said before, the etzem. So you have etzem, Sovev, and Memaleh. Now he's going to explain the rest of the verse. But before I continue, anybody want to ask anything? Comment? No, okay, good.
He's explaining it in a deep, beautiful way.
Okay. So now he's going back to the pasuk. So how is the Malchus, the Knesset Yisrael, relieved from its yearning and its deep thirst that's causing it to expire? So now here, Samchuni Bashishus, who Ashishe Yayin. Ashishe Yayin, he calls it flagons of wine. Basically, what did you say? Not flagons, would be like not barrels, but what do we call it? Flasks of wine. What is that referring to? What is that naveda? He says, "Who in your nichnas yayin yotzasayid." That when wine enters, it reveals secrets. On a physical level, is when a person gets wine, his defenses go down and he reveals what's within him. But in a primistic way, yayin is actually gematria sayid. Yayin reveals innermost parts of the neshama. So what is it? How is it relevant here? It says we nichnasayin yotzasayid b'chinas hahelam and b'chinas eidin Sovev kalam. Memaleh kalam, even though it was concealed initially, but then when it's revealed, we can relate to it. But Sovev kalam, as we said, is beyond helam. I'm sorry. I should rephrase that. Sovev kalam is helam to us. It's concealed from us. And since the soul, Malchus, Memaleh kalam, is yearning for Sovev kalam and even higher, but we started with Sovev kalam, so nichnas is through. So wine is what does that. Wine reveals the helam of Sovev kalam that the neshama is yearning for.
This is Samchuni Bashishus.
Yes. Sustain me. In other words, I'm yearning for you, the divine that's beyond existence, which is essentially a state of helam, the level of Sovev kalam. For who inyan Seid is Pnimius HaTeira, K'mesha Kosa b'Makam Acher. So this is Pnimius HaTeira that reveals the inner dimensions of Teira and of godliness.
Question, B'Shat of the words. Do you mind?
Yeah, let me just finish the one sentence. By de Pnimius HaTeira, and through the inner dimension of Teira, Nimshach b'Malchus Gilib Chinas Eira Sovev. So that's what the soul, Samchuni Bashishus, which means sustain me with the wine, through Pnimius HaTeira, Malchus, and Malchus is Nimshach, transmits into Malchus a revelation of the concealed Sovev that was concealed before, that it was yearning for. That's the first statement. Yeah, go ahead. What do you want to ask?
Just a few lines ago, we said we have a longing for higher than Memaleh Sovev. And now we're saying Mamshif Sovev.
Because if you read it before that, he began first that the yearning is for Sovev. Then he said, and then even higher than Sovev.
The tapuchim is higher.
We didn't get to tapuchim yet. So right now, if you look on page, on the line 4, he says that Semoy Shukasa is b'chinas Eira Seva Seva Klam B'Teikav Atshukav Semoy. Then he says V'Kolsh came, and even more so, and definitely. So there's 2 yearnings here. That's why I said there are 3 levels: Malchus, Memaleh, yearning for Sovev, and then yearning for something beyond Memaleh and Sovev, which is what I referred to, page 1180. We discuss in more in detail these 3 levels.
Right, the 3 levels Shabbos. Right.
Okay, now comes the second half. Rivduni b'tapuchim.
Raptuni is upholster me, like Zaymer Mefanek. Surround me with.
Support me.
It's more than supporting. That's like ripud is you're upholstering, you're sinking in it, you're sinking.
Bolstering, like bolstering?
Like upholstery, like covering a chair or a bed.
Okay, here he translates Ravduni, spread my bed. Okay, it's like a spread that completely so-called covers him. So what is this level? He says, Hu, the reach apecha kitapuchim. This is a passage that says by Yitzchak, right?
It's a pasuk.
No, maybe I'm mistaken. Okay. Al kapam reich hapecha, that you have an aroma like apples, the smell of apples. So tapuchim, in other words, is connected to the concept of a reich, of a smell. Wine.
Yeah, it's a pasuk in Shir HaShirim.
What's the lashon Pasha tell this? The reich kereich hasod. What's the lashon there?
It doesn't say there tapuchim, but in Shabbos it says hakal tapuchim kadishim. Shabbos.
Right. Yeah. Al Kapanmi says it's the level of reich hapecha kitapuchim. Shareach, what is smell? An aroma, a scent. Hudovish haneshama nenememenu. V'loy haguf. So now he's talking on a higher level. Wine is the revelation of Pnimius, of the Helam, of Sovev Kalam. Now we're going to talk about what reflects the Etzem. So the Gemara says about Reach, we learned it at length in volume 1, the difference between Shemen and Keteris. Keteris is incense. It was all about Reach. So if you remember, he spoke about the 2 nostrils.
Yeah.
So he said
until the Meich very deep.
Yeah, and it was pointed out here that smell, the nerve, the olfactory nerve goes straight to the brain more than any other senses. Correct, Dr. Lang? Yeah. So the Gemara says, reach, smell, is what the neshama. That's why psamim, we take psamim, incense. What's psamim? Spices. That when you need to revive somebody, so the Gemara, do you take a reach, a strong, like smelling salts? So the neshama nenem, the soul, not the body. So what is this referring to in Aveda? Shezal b'chin is etzem haneshama. This is the core soul, not Sovev, the transcendent level chaya, but the core neshama. Shalamaylam haneshama alamashes hamalubeshes beguf. That's higher than the soul that manifests in the body. That's why I refer you again back to page 1180, where he explains this more detail. Now, so first of all, reich is also makif, but to me it sounds like he's saying something even higher, which I think he's going to continue now. So first of all, it's makif. In that sense, it's similar, you can say, to wine. But what are the two expressions? He's clearly saying etzem and neshama here, not just the pnimis and neshama. So he adds now like this, v'yesh leimer, and we can say, the reich hapechel ke'inyan lebala chetem ani mischanen. Is an expression. I just want to see if he brings here Mashiach. Meilech v'dayin. No, he doesn't. Okay, maybe I'll bring it later. Al kaponim, the expression is that Balachetim is a way of describing godliness. Chetim is a nose, of course. Balachetim is the one that is the owner of the face, so to speak. So I don't just want to have the it's an expression. It's referring that I want the Balachetim.
It's in Zohar.
Yeah. That ani mischanen, how do you say mischanen? I beseech.
Aspire in this context?
Yeah, you could say aspire. We used aspire before, mischanen, like veschanon. It's like a prayer. It's like I pray to, I reach toward,
yeah.
I aspire. Yeah.
Rav Amnun is Sovev, boy, Litzalot, Rusei, Omar leval achoitem ani mispalel, leval achoitem ani mischanen. Rav Amnun is Sovev wanted to daven. He said, leval achoitem, I'm davening, leval achoitem, I'm mischanen.
Right. So balachet. So why does he use the word chaitim? It's like a strange word. The owner, the one who is the owner of the owner of the nose, because nose represents smell, the pnimius. That's what he's going to say. So now he's saying it's higher than just the smell. It's the owner of the smell. It's the source of the reach. Where's the reach rooted in? Because it explains elsewhere. The reach ubchinis yemine tichapkeni, the maisa mitzvahs. The reich refers to the pasuk goes, Smele tachas l'reisha v'yemine tichapkeni. It's an expression in Shir Hashirim again of love. So he says, Yemine tichapkeni, his right arm, tichapkeni, embraced me, hugged me. He said that refers to maisa mitzvahs, that when we do mitzvahs, we wrap ourselves, the mitzvahs wrap us. We are enwrapped within the love of the mitzvahs. That's reach. Ach reich de tefillah v'reich de tshuva. That's the reich of mitzvahs, the regular mitzvahs, not this higher, the third level. Ach reich de tefillah v'reich de tshuva. The aroma, the spirit, and the scent of davening and tshuva, bechinas reich beigdov. What's he referring to here? What's reich beigdov? The reich of his garments?
Stretcher sacks.
What?
Treacherous acts, Bogdov.
That's what Begdov means? Like Beged? Like rebel? Probably. Because you're doing tefillah and shuvah on something that was wrong. I have to look it up. Where'd you see the Reach Begdov? Where's the root for that? Where's the source for that expression?
We'll need Rabbi Tactel to do this.
Okay, I'll look it up. Let me just finish the paragraph. Magia, this is higher than mitzvahs. If you remember, go back to the beginning of top. If you look on the page of 1192, he said, there's ner mitzvah v'teira eir v'derech chayim techachas musar, which is higher than mitzvah and teira eir. So now we're talking about reaching a higher place that comes through a negative, through a concealment, like he said there. Now he's going to briefly answer the question with Eliyahu. Later he's going to explain it more. So he says that reaches an atzmus ein sof higher than mitzvahs. Shalamaylam b'chinas sevev. Okay, so Raf, so the Ayin, Samchuni Bashishus, is the sod, is the primis hanashama sevev. And the apples, the reach, is not just the smell, but the source of it. Atzmus ein sof that's higher than sevev. And from there comes the refuah. Remember, chelas ava anochi, ani. There's an element of illness here, lovesick, lacking. The Malchus is lacking, and therefore yearning. So this is the highest level. From there comes the healing. V'hu kamaimer. And that's like what it says, Bahares lo neyam zivcha, that when he showed her the beauty or the delight, zivcha, neyam zivcha, of his reflection, gilib chinas atzmas ein sof, os tischazik v'tisrape. Then he became strong and was healed. Is that referring to Eliyahu Novi, that lashon? I don't think so. Where's the lashon Baharis Laneim Zivcha? Okay, I have to do some research.
That's in Yedid Nefesh.
Yeah. But upon him, what we see here is that that the yearning of Aish Heh, the Aish Heh, the dark fire, it's yearning to Sovev Kalman, and even higher than that. And the highest level is where the healing comes from. Because whenever you want to heal something, you need to go deeper. When a person does mitzvahs regular, so it reaches a high level. But when there's something that was concealed, or a concealment like Malchus, feeling lacking something to the point of chelas ava, then when you reach to all the way to the etzem, that's where the healing comes from. That's briefly what he says. There's going to be more elaboration in the next mimer. So it's not over yet. But that's where the Rebbe Rashab has led us now. This is the conclusion of this mimer lech lecha. We still have to learn the actual end of the mimer. But this paragraph concludes this mimer, the main bulk of the essence of the mimer. Okay.
Reach Begdov is from a medrash in Parshas Teldos. Reach Begadov, and I guess it changes it to Reach Begdov. Look in Lakutei Torah, Parshas Teldos.
That's what I thought before with it. I think he brings the Reich Tapuchim too.
It said when Yitzchok blessed him, he told Yaakov, kiss me, Vayorach es Reach Begodav. He smelled his begodim. So the Gemara in Sanhedrin is saying, Al tikre begodav ela boigdav, that he smelled the bad people from the Yiddish people, that they did tshuva and they reached such a high level. And a Medrash is talking about two people. One was Yosef Meshisov, one was Yokum Ish Tzroiros. Yosef Meshisov when the Ramoim came to our Beis, they were scared to go in. So they said, let one of the Jews go in. So they told Yosef Mishiso, go inside, and what you're taking out belongs to you. So he took out the menorah. So they said, Ein darkei shel hedyot lishtamesh b'zeh. This is too much for you. You're a simple person. Go again and take anything. This will be yours. So he did not agree. Pinchas said they gave him 3 years something. He said no. It's enough that I made Hashem one time angry. I should make him again angry. So they put him in a table and they cut his body, and he was screaming, "Why, oi, oi, that I made Hashem angry." And Yakum Ish Tzroirois was the nephew of Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer, and he was riding on a horse on Shabbos. So Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer walked in front of him. The Roman took him to hang him, to kill him, Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer. So he told his uncle, look at me, I'm riding on a horse, free, and look what your Balabos, the Eibishter, is doing to you. So he told him, if this is what the Eibishter is doing to you, that you are going against him, of course that he will do for the people that are doing for him even more. So he said to him, there is somebody that did for Hashem more than you? So Rabbi Yosef told him that, but the end, he told him some things that it made him feel very bad, and he tortured himself very badly, and all the Dalet Mrs. Beis there until he was killed, because he was so upset that he always went against Hashem. So he died. Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer fell asleep a second, and he saw that the bed of his nephew, that was always such a bad person, is flying in the air. And he said, he came one moment before me to the Eibishter. This is Reach Boigdo. This is
which daf in Sanhedrin?
This is in Sanhedrin Lamed Zayin Omud Aleph, and in the Medrash Rabbi, Asher Samach Heh Beis is giving all of these details that I said now. But this is what the Rabbi is talking about, Boigdov, that Yitzchok, when he blessed Yaakov, he saw this, Kivyochel, the bad people. This is what made him to bless Yaakov.
Okay, Shukayach, thank you. That's good. That helps. Okay, so we're going to stop here at the end of the paragraph, 1195.